I stood frozen in the doorway of my late husband's farmhouse, my hands trembling so badly that the keys Mr. Thompson had given me slipped through my fingers and clattered onto the wooden floor. The sound echoed through the space, but I barely heard it. My eyes were locked on what lay before me, and I couldn't breathe. The living room wasn't empty like I'd expected. It was full of life, evidence of people who clearly lived here. There were 3 couches arranged around a coffee table, scattered with books and magazines. Women's sweaters hung over chairbacks in different sizes. A pair of small shoes sat by the door. Children's shoes. My throat tightened as my gaze moved to the walls. Drawings. Dozens of children's drawings were taped up everywhere. Crayon pictures of flowers, houses, stick figure families. On the mantel above the fireplace sat photograph after photograph in mismatched frames. Young women smiling at the camera. Teenage girls. Children I'd never seen before in my life. Not a single picture of me. Who were these people? And why had George forbidden me from ever coming here? Let me go back 3 weeks, to when this nightmare started. George died on a Tuesday afternoon. The police came to my door at 4:17 p.m. I remember because I'd just gotten home from work and hadn't even taken off my coat. They said his car went off the road near Moorfield Pass. He died instantly. I stood there nodding, hearing the words but not really understanding them. George was just gone. We'd been married 15 years. Our relationship wasn't passionate or exciting, but it was steady, comfortable. George worked as an accountant, and I kept books for a local hardware store. We had dinner together most nights, watched television, lived a quiet life. At least, I thought we did. 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, George would leave early in the morning and not come back until evening. Going to the farm, he'd say, kissing my forehead. The farm had belonged to his family, some property out in the country he'd inherited. I'd asked to visit once, years ago, when we were first married. The way his face had changed still stuck in my memory. His jaw had tightened, and his eyes went hard in a way I'd never seen before or since. "No," he'd said firmly. "The farm is my responsibility, Amanda. I need you to promise me you'll never go there. It's not safe, old buildings, equipment that could hurt you. Promise me." I'd promised. I was good at following rules, at not making waves. If George wanted the farm to be his private domain, fine. I had my own life, my own routines. I never asked again. After the funeral, George's lawyer, Mr. Thompson, called and asked me to come to his office. He was an elderly man with kind eyes that seemed sad when he looked at me. We sat in his leather chairs while he went through the basics of George's will. The apartment we lived in, our modest savings, it all came to me, as expected. Then Mr. Thompson reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a set of keys on a simple ring. He slid them across the polished wood toward me. "The farm is yours now, Mrs. Pierce," he said quietly. I stared at the keys like they were a snake. "I'll sell it," I said immediately. "I don't know anything about farming or property management. I'll just sell it." Mr. Thompson's expression grew troubled. He leaned forward, folding his hands together. "Mrs. Pierce, your husband was a complicated man. The farm, well, I think you should see it yourself before making any decisions about what to do with it." Something in his tone made my skin prickle. "What do you mean, complicated? What's at the farm?" He shook his head slowly. "It's not my place to explain," George wanted. "He made me promise that if anything happened to him, you'd receive the keys and the choice would be yours. Please, just go see it before you decide anything." I left his office with those keys burning a hole in my purse. For a week, I tried to ignore them. I went to work, came home, sorted through George's clothes to donate, handled all the practical matters of death. But every night, I'd lie in bed thinking about that farm. The place George had forbidden me from seeing for 15 years. What could possibly be there that was so secret? Finally, curiosity won. Yesterday morning, I'd gotten in my car and driven 2 hours into farm country, following the GPS coordinates Mr. Thompson had written down. The property was larger than I'd imagined. A main house, 2 big barns, several smaller buildings, all surrounded by fields. Everything looked well maintained, not abandoned like I'd expected. I'd parked in front of the house, my heart pounding. The key turned smoothly in the lock. The door swung open. And now here I stood, staring at evidence that my husband had been living some kind of double life I couldn't begin to understand. My hands were still shaking as I bent to pick up the dropped keys. That's when I heard it. A soft creak from somewhere above me. Footsteps crossing the floor upstairs. Someone was in this house with me. My heart slammed against my ribs as I heard another footstep above me, then the soft click of a door closing. Every instinct screamed at me to run back to my car, but my feet wouldn't move. This was my property now. My house. Who was upstairs? Hello? My voice came out shaky and thin. I know someone's up there. This is private property. Silence! Then I heard whispered voices, more than one person. My hand fumbled for my phone in my pocket, fingers poised to dial 911. I moved toward the staircase, each step feeling like I was walking through mud. I'm calling the police right now, I said, louder this time, trying to sound braver than I felt. You need to come out. Please don't. The voice was young, female, and absolutely terrified. Please, please don't call the police. I froze on the 3rd step. A girl emerged at the top of the stairs, and my breath caught. She couldn't have been more than 16, painfully thin, with tangled blonde hair and red-rimmed eyes. She was shaking worse than I was. Please, she said again, tears streaming down her face. He promised we were safe here. He promised. Who promised? What are you talking about? My mind raced. Who are you? Before she could answer, another woman appeared behind her. This one was older, maybe in her 30s, with dark hair pulled back and sharp, distrustful eyes. She put a protective hand on the girl's shoulder and stared at me with open hostility. Who are you? The woman demanded. What are you doing here? I'm Amanda Pierce, I said, my voice stronger now, despite my confusion. This farm belonged to my husband, George. He died 3 weeks ago, and I inherited it. Now I'm asking you again. Who are you, and what are you doing in my house? The girl made a choking sound. The older woman's face went pale. Your husband? The woman said slowly. Mr. George was married. The way she said it, the genuine shock in her voice, made something cold settle in my stomach. I climbed the rest of the stairs carefully, keeping my phone visible in my hand. When I reached the top, I could see they were standing in front of a bedroom door, like they were guarding it. Yes, married to me for 15 years, I said. Now please, tell me what's going on. The older woman studied my face for a long moment, then seemed to make a decision. Her shoulders dropped slightly. My name is Helena. I've been living here for 3 years. This is Claire. She's been here for 8 months. She paused. Mr. George never mentioned having a wife. To us, he was just a kind man who gave us a place to stay when we had nowhere else to go. The words hit me like a physical blow. 3 years? 8 months? I gripped the stair railing to steady myself. I don't understand, I whispered. George came here 3 times a week. He said he was maintaining the property. What do you mean he gave you a place to stay? Claire wiped her eyes with her sleeve. I was sleeping in the bus station in Millbrook, she said quietly. I'd been there for 2 days. I had nowhere to go and I was so scared. Mr. George found me there. He bought me dinner and asked if I needed help. I thought he might be like other men who'd offered to help. But he wasn't. He just brought me here and said I could stay as long as I needed to be safe. My legs felt weak. I moved to sit on the top step, trying to process this. Safe from what? Helena answered this time. Everyone here is running from something, Mrs. Pierce. Bad situations, dangerous people, places where we couldn't stay anymore. Her voice was hard, defensive. Mr. George helped women who had nowhere else to turn. He asked nothing from us except that we keep this place private and help each other out. I looked up at her, seeing the challenge in her eyes. How many women? Right now? 3. Claire, myself and Natalie. She's a young mother with a baby. She's in town right now at a doctor's appointment. Helena crossed her arms. Over the years there have been more. Some stayed a few weeks, some longer. Mr. George kept records in his office downstairs. My husband. My quiet, distant husband who I thought barely noticed me. He'd been running a secret shelter for vulnerable women for years, and I'd known nothing about it. Why didn't he tell me? The question came out as barely a whisper. Helena's expression softened just slightly. Maybe he thought you wouldn't understand. Maybe he was trying to protect you. Maybe... She trailed off, then said bluntly, maybe he thought you'd shut it down. The words stung because somewhere deep down, I wondered if she was right. The Amanda from 3 weeks ago. Organized, rule-following, risk-averse Amanda. Would she have understood this? Would she have accepted her husband harboring strangers, taking on liability, putting himself in potential danger? I didn't get to answer that question because Claire suddenly gasped, looking out the hallway window that faced the driveway. There's a truck coming, she said, her voice rising in panic. Helena, there's someone coming. Helena rushed to the window and her face went sheet white. She grabbed my arm hard enough to hurt. Did anyone follow you here? She demanded. Did anyone see you come? No, I don't think so. Why? Who is it? Claire had started backing away from the window, her whole body trembling. Helena's grip on my arm tightened. That's Brendan Lowe, she said urgently. Claire's stepfather. Mrs. Pierce. If he finds her here, he'll kill her. Helena's words turned my blood to ice. I looked at Claire and saw pure terror on her face. She'd gone completely white and was backing against the wall, making herself as small as possible. Upstairs closet now, Helena hissed at Claire, practically pushing her down the hallway. Don't make a sound. Don't come out until I tell you it's safe. I watched Claire disappear into a room, heard the closet door close. My mind was spinning, but something deeper than thought took over. Some instinct I didn't know I had. A frightened child was in my house, and a dangerous man was outside. Nothing else mattered. Stay up here with her, I told Helena. I'll handle this. You don't understand what he's capable of. Then I won't let him in, I said firmly, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded. This is my property. Legally, I know he has no right to be here. I walked downstairs on shaking legs, forcing myself to breathe normally. Through the front window I could see a man getting out of a dusty pickup truck. He was big, over 6 feet tall, broad-shouldered, maybe in his mid-40s. Even from a distance there was something threatening about the way he moved. I opened the front door before he could knock, stepping out onto the porch and pulling the door firmly closed behind me. I wanted my body blocking any view into the house. Can I help you? I asked, channeling every ounce of confidence I could fake. He looked me up and down with cold grey eyes. Who are you? I'm Amanda Pierce. I own this property. And you are? Brendan Lowe. He didn't offer his hand. I'm looking for someone. A blonde girl. 16 years old. Skinny. You seen anyone like that around here? My heart hammered, but I kept my expression neutral. I just inherited this farm from my late husband. I've been here less than an hour, and the property was empty when I arrived. No one's been around. His eyes narrowed. That's so. Mind if I take a look inside? Yes, I do mind. I crossed my arms. This is private property, Mr. Lowe. Unless you have a warrant or some legal authority to be here, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. He took a step closer, and I could smell cigarettes and something sour. The girl I'm looking for is my stepdaughter. She ran away from home 8 months ago. That makes it family business, not trespassing. If your stepdaughter is a runaway, That's a matter for the police, I said, holding my ground even though my knees felt like water. Have you filed a missing person report? Something flickered across his face. Annoyance. Maybe anger. I've been handling it myself, looking in places she might go, and I got a tip that this farm has been helping certain people, hiding them. My stomach dropped, but I kept my voice level. I don't know what you're talking about. My husband used this as storage property. I'm just here to assess what needs to be done before I sell it. Brendan studied me for a long moment. Then he smiled, and it was one of the most unpleasant expressions I'd ever seen. You're lying. I can always tell when someone's lying to me. He moved forward, like he was going to push past me into the house. Without thinking, I pulled out my phone and held it up. Take one more step, and I'm calling the sheriff, I said loudly. You're on private property without permission. That's trespassing. I don't care what family business you think you have. You leave now or I press charges. We stood there in a standoff, his bulk towering over me. For a terrible moment, I thought he might actually force his way in. His hands clenched into fists at his sides. Then he stepped back, but his eyes stayed locked on mine. You know what happens to people who lie to me, he said quietly. Bad things, accidents. You seem like a nice lady. Wouldn't want anything unfortunate to happen. Are you threatening me? I kept my phone up, making sure he could see my finger hovering over the call button. He held up his hands in mock surrender. Just giving friendly advice. This area can be dangerous. Lots of accidents on these country roads. Your husband, for instance, heard he died in a car crash. Real tragedy. The way he said it made my skin crawl. Was he implying something about George's death? Get off my property. Now. Brendan backed toward his truck slowly, keeping his eyes on me the whole time. I'll be going. But I'll be around. And when I find my stepdaughter, and I will find her, there's going to be consequences for anyone who helped hide her from me. You remember that? He climbed into his truck and started the engine. I stayed on the porch, phone still in hand, watching as he drove away. He went slowly, his head turning to look at the barns, the other buildings, like he was memorizing the layout of the property. Only when his truck disappeared down the long driveway did I allow my knees to buckle. I sat down hard on the porch steps, my whole body shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. The door opened behind me. Helena stepped out, her face grim. You did good, she said quietly. But he'll be back. Men like Brendan always come back. I looked up at her. What did he do to Claire? Helena's jaw tightened. Things no child should ever experience. Her mother tried to protect her, but Brendan put her in the hospital. When Claire tried to stop him, he turned on her too. She ran with just the clothes on her back. My hands clenched. I thought about that terrified girl upstairs hiding in a closet. I thought about George finding her in that bus station, alone and scared. How did Brendan find this place? I don't know, Helena admitted. We've always been so careful. Mr. George made sure. She stopped abruptly. Made sure what? She hesitated, then said, Mrs. Pierce, there's something you need to see. Come inside. I followed Helena inside, my legs still unsteady. Claire emerged from upstairs, her face streaked with tears. She looked at me with something like awe. You stood up to him, she whispered. No one ever stands up to Brendan. I didn't feel brave. I felt terrified and confused and angry at my dead husband for leaving me in this impossible situation. But I managed a small nod at Claire before Helena led me down the hallway to a closed door I hadn't noticed before. This was Mr. George's office, Helena said, opening it. He kept it locked, but I know where he hid the key. After he died, I looked through some of his things, trying to understand what we should do. The office was small and neat, just like George always kept his workspace at home. A desk with an old computer, filing cabinets, shelves of books. Helena pulled open the bottom desk drawer and felt around until something clicked. A false bottom lifted up, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside was a leather journal, some photographs, and a stack of papers. Helena handed me the journal. "You should read this. Not all of it now, but enough to understand." My hands trembled as I opened it. George's handwriting, small, precise, familiar, covered the pages. I started reading randomly, my eyes catching on phrases that made my chest ache. October 3rd. Brought Patricia flowers today. 10 years since I lost her. I still can't forgive myself for not seeing the signs, for not getting her away from him in time. This work doesn't bring her back, but maybe it means her death wasn't completely meaningless. Patricia, George's younger sister. He'd told me she died before we met, but never explained how. I'd assumed illness or an accident. I turned more pages. April 12th. New arrival today. Woman named Helena, bruises on her arms she tried to hide. Asked her if she needed a safe place to stay. The look of desperate hope in her eyes reminded me so much of Patricia. I can't save my sister, but I can save others. I looked up at Helena. She was watching me with an unreadable expression. "He never told you about his sister?" she asked. I shook my head, not trusting my voice. "He told me," Helena said softly. "About 6 months after I got here. We were working in the garden and he just started talking. Said his sister had been in a bad relationship, that her boyfriend got more and more controlling, then violent. George was young, away at college. He didn't realize how bad it was until he came home for Christmas and saw bruises she couldn't hide anymore. He convinced her to leave, helped her pack a bag." Helena paused, her own eyes distant with the memory of whatever George had told her. But her boyfriend found out. Came after her. George's sister died that night. The boyfriend pushed her down a flight of stairs when she tried to leave. Claimed it was an accident. Only served 3 years. The room spun slightly. I gripped the edge of the desk. George had carried this pain our entire marriage and never said a word. I kept reading the journal, flipping through entries that documented years of quiet rescue work. Names, dates, brief notes about women he'd helped. Some entries were just a few words. "Maya left today, new job in Portland." She smiled. Others were longer, detailing the complicated logistics of keeping everyone safe. Then I reached the recent entries, from just before George died. My blood went cold. May 2nd. Found something disturbing today. Someone left photographs under my apartment door. Pictures of the farm, of Helena in the garden, of Claire reading on the porch. No note, just the photos. Someone knows what I'm doing here. May 5th. More photos today. These had dates written on the back. Times when I was at the farm. Someone has been watching, documenting. I need to be more careful. Need to think about what to do. May 8th. Decided I have to go to the police. This is bigger than my need for privacy now. If someone dangerous has found the farm, I need official protection for the women here. We'll go tomorrow after work. The next page was blank. I checked the date of the last entry. May 8th. George died on May 9th. He never made it to the police, I said, my voice hollow. Helena shook her head. His car went off the road the next day. I looked through the other items in the hidden compartment. The photographs George had mentioned. Clear shots of the farm, of the women, taken with a telephoto lens from a distance. On the back of each, dates and times written in unfamiliar handwriting. And tucked beneath them, a business card for a private investigation firm in Millbrook. Someone hired a private investigator, I said slowly, the pieces clicking together. Someone was looking for one of you, and they found this place. Brendan, Claire said from the doorway. She'd come down so quietly I hadn't heard her. It has to be Brendan. He has money from his business. He's obsessed with finding me, proving I can't run away from him. Helena's face was grim. If he hired that investigator, then he's known about this place for weeks, maybe longer. The implications crashed over me like a wave. The photographs had appeared days before George's accident. George had been planning to get help, to involve authorities, and then suddenly his car went off the road on a clear day. Do you think... I couldn't finish the sentence. It sounded too much like a conspiracy theory, too paranoid, but Helena finished it for me. Do I think someone killed Mr. George? Yes. I've thought that since the day we heard he died. He was the most careful driver I ever knew. My husband, murdered. To keep this place secret, or to keep him from protecting these women, or both. And now I'd inherited not just property, but danger. I pulled out my phone, hands shaking again, but for a different reason now. This wasn't just about trespassing anymore. This was about something much darker. We need help, I said. We need to call. A brick crashed through the front window, glass exploding across the living room floor. We all jumped, Claire screaming. The brick rolled to a stop on the carpet, white paper wrapped around it and secured with a rubber band. With trembling fingers, I unwrapped the note. Block letters, written in black marker. Stop hiding what doesn't belong to you. I stared at the note, glass crunching under my feet as I moved to the broken window. No vehicle sounds. There's no sign of anyone outside. Whoever threw it had done it quickly and disappeared. That's it, I said, my fear transforming into something harder. Anger. I'm calling the police right now. This time Helena didn't argue. I dialed 911 and reported the vandalism, the threatening note, and Brendan's earlier visit. The dispatcher said a deputy would be there within 30 minutes. While we waited, I helped Helena sweep up the glass. Claire sat curled on the couch, looking small and defeated. I kept thinking about George, about him standing in this same room, reading threatening messages, knowing someone was watching. Had he been scared? He must have been. But he'd planned to fight back, to get help for these women even if it exposed everything he'd built. Now I had to do the same thing. The deputy who arrived was a woman in her 40s, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense manner. Deputy Torres, her nameplate read. I showed her the note, told her about Brendan's visit, explained the broken window. Then I took a breath and told her the rest. About the women George had been sheltering, about the photographs, about my suspicions regarding my husband's death. I watched her face carefully, waiting for judgment or disbelief. Instead, she listened quietly, taking notes. When I finished, she looked at Helena and Claire. You're running from an abusive situation? She asked Claire gently. Claire nodded, not meeting her eyes. And you, ma'am? Torres asked Helena. Was. 3 years ago. I'm safe now, but I have nowhere else to go. Mr. George let me stay. Deputy Torres tapped her pen against her notepad. What your husband was doing, Mrs. Pierce? His heart was in the right place. But it's complicated legally. These women need documentation, official domestic violence resources, legal protection orders. Operating an informal shelter like this, even with good intentions, creates liability issues. My heart sank. So you're going to shut this down? I didn't say that. Torres's expression softened slightly. I said it's complicated, but there are ways to do this right, legally, safely, with proper protections in place. She looked at the note again. This Brendan Lowe, he has a record. Assault charges from 4 years ago, though the victim didn't press charges, so it didn't go anywhere. If Claire is willing to give a statement about what he did to her, we can get a restraining order at minimum. Claire looked up, fear and hope warring on her face. Will that stop him? It's a start, Torres said honestly. And breaking a restraining order means jail time. It's not perfect, but it's protection. After Deputy Torres left, promising to have patrol cars drive by regularly and taking the threatening note as evidence, I sat down at George's desk. The deputy had given me contact information for domestic violence organizations, legal aid services, and the county office that handled housing assistance. My organized bookkeeper brain kicked in. I started making lists, researching on George's computer. If I was going to continue what he'd started, I needed to do it right. That meant legal structure, official non-profit status, proper documentation. It meant bringing this whole operation out of the shadows. Over the next several weeks, I barely slept. I worked with a lawyer Mr. Thompson recommended to establish the farm as a legitimate transitional housing facility. I met with domestic violence advocates who helped me understand regulations and best practices. I applied for grants and non-profit status. Helena became my partner in all of this. She understood what the women needed in ways I couldn't, and her street-smart practicality balanced my by-the-book approach. Together, we created something stronger than what George had built alone. Claire gave her statement to the police. With her testimony and the threatening note, they had enough to charge Brendan with harassment and criminal threatening. Better yet, a background check revealed he was on parole for a previous assault conviction. The threats violated his parole, and within a week, he was arrested. Claire cried with relief when Deputy Torres called to tell us. I also convinced Dr. Cole, the veterinarian who'd contacted me with suspicions about George's death, to make an official statement. The police reopened the investigation into the accident. I didn't know if they'd ever prove it was anything more than bad luck and a dangerous road, but at least someone was looking. The farm transformed. I converted the largest barn into 4 private studio apartments, each with a bathroom and kitchenette. I hired Helena officially as the resident manager, giving her actual employment and a salary. I established partnerships with job training programs, brought in a therapist who donated hours twice a week, and connected with legal advocates who could help residents with protection orders and custody issues. Natalie, the young mother I'd finally met, got her GED through a program I arranged. Her son took his first wobbly steps in the farmhouse kitchen. While Helena and I cheered, 2 more women arrived, one referred by Deputy Torres, another by the domestic violence shelter in the next county. The network George had been building in secret became official, recognized, supported. 6 months after I'd first turned that key in the lock, I stood in my kitchen, because it was mine now, truly mine, making dinner for everyone. 7 women and 3 children currently called the farm home. Through the window, I could see the garden where Helena was teaching one of the newer residents how to plant tomatoes. I'd installed security cameras, good locks, motion sensor lights. The driveway had a proper gate now. The women here were still vulnerable, still healing, but they weren't hidden. They had legal protections, official support, and a community that knew they existed. On the wall, I'd hung a photograph I'd found in George's desk. Him as a young man with his arm around a pretty girl who had his same smile, Patricia. Next to it, I'd placed a photo from our wedding day. George looked stiff and formal in his suit, but I could see now what I'd missed then. A deep sadness in his eyes that never fully went away. I understand now, I whispered to the photograph. Why you kept this separate. Why you didn't think you could share it. He'd built this sanctuary from grief and guilt. Emotions he'd locked away so tightly he didn't know how to open them, even to someone who loved him. By the time it grew into something beautiful, the pattern of secrets was set. Was it right? No. Would I have preferred he'd trusted me? Absolutely. But I also understood that people were complicated. Love existed even in imperfect forms. And sometimes the greatest gifts came wrapped in the strangest packages. I'd been transformed too. The careful, risk-averse bookkeeper who'd spent 15 years in a comfortable but empty marriage now ran a sanctuary for the vulnerable. I made decisions that affected lives. I'd stood up to a dangerous man on my porch. I'd learned that the most important rules weren't always the ones written in law books. Sometimes they were written in compassion. That evening, after everyone was fed and the kitchen cleaned, after the children were in bed and the house settled into peaceful quiet, I locked up and set the security system. I touched the photographs by the door. My small ritual now. They're safe, George, I said softly. I've got it from here. I promise. The farm that had been forbidden was now my purpose. The husband who'd kept secrets had given me the greatest gift, even if he'd done it imperfectly. The locked door that once excluded me had become the open door through which I welcomed those who had nowhere else to go. I turned off the lights and climbed the stairs to my bedroom. I'd moved into the farmhouse completely now, leaving our old apartment behind. Through the window, I could see the barn lights glowing softly. the shadows of the trees George had planted years ago. For the first time since his death, I felt complete peace. The mystery was solved. The secret was understood. And the work, the beautiful, difficult, essential work of giving safety to those who'd known only danger, continued. My husband had saved his sister too late, so he'd spent years saving others. Now I would honor both of them by making sure that salvation didn't have to hide in shadows anymore. The farm stood quiet in the darkness, sheltering its residents. And I, Amanda Pierce, stood guard over it all. No longer the woman who'd been kept away, but the woman who would make sure no one who needed sanctuary would ever be turned away again.